to speed things up, because we are short-staffed, we're allowing people into the country without first doing that security screening.
Okay, hold on a second here. So you're saying that a refugee claimant coming to Canada goes to a machine.
How are your members dealing with the strain of having, 300,000 pending asylum claims on top of what they're dealing with every day?
I question what the 18 weeks training and the 1-year apprenticeship is for if I'm simply there to watch a machine allow people in.
Wow. So, okay, this just gets worse, I think.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Yes, we have full agreement. Thank you, Ms. Rumpel-Gardner. That's very efficient. Thank you very much. So with that, pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on October 23rd, 2025, the committee is resuming its study of subject matter of Bill C12, an act respecting certain measures relating to the security of Canada's borders and the integrity of the Canadian immigration system, and respecting other related security measures. I would now like to warmly welcome the witnesses for our first panel. Joining us by Zoom, we have Debbie Douglas, the Executive Director of the Ontario Council of Agencies Serving Immigrants. And here in the room, we have Mark Weber, National President, Customs and Immigration Union from the Public Service Alliance of Canada.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses today. Mr. Weber, in your testimony, you spoke about the one-touch system and talked about how there's little interaction with the human in that system. Are we talking about the machines that when I come across the border back from Canada, I put my stuff in there and is that what you're talking about, or is this something different?
Different system. Those would be pick machines. For refugee claimants, when they arrive into the country, previously they used to get a full interview with an officer. Security screening was done there. That's changed to a system that's called One Touch. So essentially we get tombstone data, we do some biometrics, and the claimant is then allowed into the country to complete their security screening and such on their own through the One Touch system. They have, I believe it's 45 days to submit that, meaning in essence, to speed things up, because we are short-staffed, we're allowing people into the country without first doing that security screening.
Okay, hold on a second here. So you're saying that a refugee claimant coming to Canada goes to a machine and says, I want to be a refugee in Canada, hits a button and they're in the country? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's not a machine, it's an application. So the One Touch system, they're given instructions on how to use that. That connects directly with IRCC, and they're given that documentation to complete on their own once they're in the country. We're not doing that. So basically
they take out their phone theoretically and they tap it a few times and they are now in the country as a refugee accepted by our country.
Yes, we get some basic data from them, and again, we do the biometrics. Beyond that, they're doing that on their own, yes.
So no human interaction. Your members do not ask any questions, don't confirm anything. It's a free-for-all into the country that way?
Very little. I don't know if I'd use the term free-for-all, but for the most part, it's self-declaration on the claimant's part, yes.
And so from your perspective and your members' perspective, this is not a good thing?
This is a terrible thing. It's during the interview, and again, I spoke to it in my opening statement about human interaction. That's where we ask follow-up questions. That's where we establish whether there's coaching, whether it's a legitimate claim. That's how those files are built so they can be dealt with properly. Later, that's where we gain that intelligence, and that's currently been lost, not to mention that about 10% never complete the forms through One Touch. So you figure with about 100,000 claimants a year, that's about 10,000 people who are allowed into Canada who they disappear. Then it's our inland officers then have to find them and remove them, so you're adding additional burdens down the road.
So 10,000 potential false claimants coming into that system that have to be removed. Wow. So I guess would it make sense from your perspective if, thinking now maybe about an asylum claimant, when they appear at the border, they don't necessarily have to give a reason for why they want to claim asylum at that point. Is that true?
Not a full reason, no.
Do you think it would be helpful if they did have to make that statement right away?
I think, again, the devil's in the detail. The key is allowing us to do the interview, to get the full story and ask follow-up questions, to, judge and provide the proper information so that it can be dealt with later to determine whether it's a legitimate claim or not. That's what we're trained to do, and that's currently the part specifically that's been lost.
What would you think about not only doing that, but actually having that kind of recorded so that it's clear what the answers were from the claimant? Would that be a helpful thing or not?
I think it could be, yes.
Is it technically something that could possibly be done?
Technically, yeah. I mean, given what we see can be done now, I think so, yes.
Interesting. When the government did Bill C12, did they ask for your or your members' input on this?
No. They may have spoken with members. The CBSA may have spoken with members directly about some need, not that I know of, though. I was not spoken with. In terms of, I read before you talked about, you testified to the Public Safety Committee a while back, and you said, and I quote, speaking about the culture of the senior leadership in the Government of Canada, you said, quote, they have chosen to focus entirely too much on the services part of its name at the expense of what should be its primary mission, ensuring the security of our border and protecting Canadian communities. I'm assuming you're talking about CBSA there. Yes.
So, I think we agree with that. Roxham Road, if you look at that, CBSA and RCMP officers became welcomers. Do you believe that with the adoption of Bill C12, the government is going to suddenly shift its general attitude away from servicing illegal border crossers to enforcing the law? Or do you believe that this legislation is just another gift to Donald Trump from Mark Carney?
1 minute.
Yeah, I mean, my belief aside, I'm here to provide testimony in the hopes that that focus now switches back to security over facilitation. I think technology is absolutely useful. We're not dinosaurs. We realize there's a place for that. But again, the technology that we see the CBSA putting in place is all about self-declaration. It's about the traveler. It's about the refugee claimant doing everything on their own because we simply don't have the staff to do the proper interviews and do what we did previously. We need to see that stop. The government has consistently said that the United States is a safe third country. From your perspective, would you agree with that assessment? I think that is worth monitoring closely as time goes on.
Do you think that other Western democracies could also be considered safe third countries, European countries, things like that, places like that?
Again, not something that CIU has analyzed or put any research into. If you're asking me as Mark Weber, I would say most likely yes.
Thank you so much.
Bill C12 will enact legislative changes that would allow CBSA to better respond to the needs and pressures of the asylum system. Are you able to outline what tools this legislation would unlock for officers in the field and how these tools will help stabilize and secure the asylum system?
So I know there's curbs on when claims can be made, greater information sharing. Again, the devil's really in the detail. We don't know specifically what information that is that's going to be shared. Is it information that's useful for us? What are we getting from IRCC? What is being provided by the RCMP and back and forth? None of that's been worked out yet. So it's really hard in terms of the information to answer that. But the additional staff, if it's allocated properly to the front line, focused on security, that will absolutely be a big help, yes.
Okay. My last question to you is, in addition to the measures in Bill C12, are there any further resources, training programs, procedural improvements you would recommend to strengthen border security while supporting fair and consistent outcomes for asylum claimants?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, the initial interaction with the person coming in, that is key. That helps in both ways. It helps identify legitimate claims, and it helps identify concerns, and it helps build those files so when it's dealt with later, it is dealt with appropriately. That's currently missing. And again, the additional people, if the 1,000 are allocated properly, that'll help us be able to do that and hopefully get away from that kind of automated self-service system where, again, we're seeing about 10% who never even really follow up, who are in the country. I mean, we assume they're not here. We assume it's not a legitimate claim if they're not following up as they should. That's not necessarily even so. It's just 10% who essentially disappear into Canada somewhere. We don't know where.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Weber. No further questions, Madam Chair.
You said something powerful in your speech, in your opening remarks to us. You used the words reduced security for the sake of expediency. That's very, very, very concerning. And then in response to some questions from my colleague, Mr. Redekop, did you say it takes 45 days for someone after they get that initial one-touch system where they basically, pass the biometrics and fill in a few things, they have 45 days to self-administer the rest of the questionnaire and respond?
That's correct.
And how many of those in that period of time were deemed inadmissible?
So inadmissibility is deemed later on in the process. Again, our goal at the border is to build the file to be able to, identify non-genuine claims, right? And right now, we're kind of relying on people to self-declare that they're a non-genuine claim. That's unlikely.
And you don't have them in front of you. You can't speak to them. You're just giving you a document that says, no, I'm not a criminal. I'm a good person.
Yes.
And I'm coming into the country, so let me stay in the country. At a time when CBSA has testified before this committee that they're trying to find 30,000 people in Canada that need to leave the country that are not here at this time. I want to touch base with you about one other thing. Is you mentioned additional resources and getting more people. So I looked in the 406-page budget that the government put forth in Parliament for immigration, refugees, and citizenship to see what's in there for immigration. And very much to my surprise, the very opening line written in only the one-page document on page 311 that deals with immigration, despite the massive problems we're having with the file in the country. The very opening line is to meet up to 15% in savings targets over 3 years. The IRCC is rationalizing programming and so forth. How do you see that affecting your members?
I mean, our members are not IRCC. I have a lot of sympathy, and our members do too, for what they go through. The one-touch system I described, essentially when claimants complete that goes directly to IRCC. That's out of our hands, and they're given all that additional work while we, talk about massive cuts.
But you're doing really important work, and your work is, ensuring that the people that come into this country are safe to walk around in our communities. But you're being hampered because you don't have the resources to do that. They put in a system that, as you say, reduces security, but is more expedient. Canadians have an expectation that the people that are allowed into the country are safe to walk around in our streets, in our communities, around our schools, around our community centers. So it's shocking that committed officers with conviction, your members, who want to make sure that the border is as safe as possible, don't have the right tools to be able to do that. Now, you also mentioned about the morale, so I want to ask you that about that. How are your members dealing with the strain of having, 300,000 pending asylum claims on top of what they're dealing with every day?
Yeah, that's a heavy load to carry. We score last in the Public Service Employee Survey. We were in the last one. Occasionally we get up to second to last, but we're fairly regularly down at the bottom. I think this is part of it. I think management culture where management does not come from the ranks, where you have people making decisions who never worked at a border, who've never worn a uniform, who don't understand, again, the details of how any of these processes work. That's a big issue. I think how our accommodated officers are dealt with. I mentioned it briefly in my opening statement. Currently, we have about 200 accommodated officers, and I say accommodated, they can do almost the full job, except they cannot carry the firearm for injury. Some were injured during use of force training. CBSA is having them look at forced medical retirement rather than taking them and using that expertise and that knowledge. We're talking mostly seasoned officers who would be able to do things like process these claimants rather than go through one touch. There was a pilot program in Niagara Falls where they had accommodated officers do exactly this, and they were able to process faster than one touch was able to do it and give the full interview. Those are the kinds of things that we look to the CBSA to work on and to bring us back to interdiction rather than facilitation, and they don't. It's easier to treat your employees as a number who are disposable employees, right? That's how it's looked at.
That's very unfair. I assume that's it.
That is time. Thank you so much, Mr. Metagakis.
Thank you.
I don't see utility in dwelling on the past. However, it is important to understand where we've come from. Can you speak about previous cuts to CBSA, I'm talking about years back under the Harper government, the effect that had on CBSA, the challenges that posed for border security in general?
Yeah,
as a lesson learned, perhaps.
That was back during DRAP, I would say 2013, 14. Very difficult. Again, that was a lot of frontline positions that were lost. I believe we looked around 1,200 total positions that were lost during that period. And you know, we haven't really recovered from that. Those numbers stayed pretty much at what they were cut to for many years afterward. And of course, we've gotten busier. We've seen the influx of refugee claimants. We did not have Roxham Road. We didn't really have the inland offices that we have now. We have immigration holding centers now, too, that have to be staffed. So our needs have gotten greater and our numbers have not gotten up from back in those years when we got cut. So it's been extremely difficult. So the 1,000 is very welcome.
Okay. Now something more concrete. We are looking at Bill C12. Recommendations, 2 or 3 recommendations that you have for this committee on your understanding of C12.
Again, review One Touch, start getting those interviews going and start doing the screening before you're allowing people into the country, and allow us to use our skill and expertise to gather the intel, to find the people smugglers, to look for those indicators of coaching. That's what we used to do. I'd really like to see us get back to that. And overarching, I think, in whatever is applied from C12, we need to make sure that the technology that's applied is used to help the human being who is having the interaction with the person who is coming into Canada, rather than putting technology in place to allow people to simply self-declare and hopefully at some point self-declare that they're here for no good.
On this one-touch point, and I understand everything you've shared so far, but there are other democracies that are using this system. Can you speak to that and how that compares with Canada?
I can't, no. I'm not sure exactly how their systems work. I know there's technology that's used in other countries. I mean, I've flown into the U.S. You see the biometrics and such. In certain aspects, they have more in place than we do. But when I do go, for example, to the United States, one of the things I do see is officers interacting and speaking to travelers as they come through. We've almost completely gotten rid of that at the CBSA, and that's partly staffing, but that's also partly focus. We've become really focused on facilitation and an attitude of, oh, well, it's fine, they self-declared at the pick machine.
Yeah, for the purposes of the record, I'll just note to colleagues, it's the European Union and specifically Germany that's noted that is using systems quite similar to this. So this is for our understanding as a committee, and I just referred that to analysts as well. That's all through, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
That's time.
Mr. Weber, you just said something quite interesting. You're referring to One Touch, and you said if you're not concerned about security, it's a great system, or something to that effect. Who exactly, or what are you referring to there? Are you referring to a specific person, or?
No, not a specific person. I'm talking about a culture at the CBSA who, over the years, having to deal with the level of understaffing that they have, I believe organizationally has kind of become lazy. That is no longer really the focus. How do we keep this ship afloat given what we have? I think that's the mentality.
So to paraphrase then, you're saying that from your perspective, the culture that exists at CBSA, and I assume you're speaking of management culture there, is not focused primarily on security. So basically the agency that is, whose job it is, whose sole purpose in life is to keep our borders secure, is actually not overly concerned about security. That's kind of what you're saying?
I think that can be a challenge, yes. I think over time the focus has become more about facilitation. There's excellent managers who I speak with who contact the union about concerns that they have, who would love to get back to doing the kind of interviews and interdiction that they used to do, but realistically, I mean, they'll tell me who am I sending to do that, right?
Right. So, I mean, no doubt that you have very capable officers, and I'm sure there are management level people who are also very dedicated and wanting to do their job. I'm sure that's why you signed up for the job in the first place. But so what you're saying is basically coming from the government and into senior management levels, there's a culture that our job is to be more service-oriented, customer service-oriented, rather than, security-oriented. Is that fair?
Yeah, my experience at the CBSA and what I hear from my members is that there's nothing that's more frightening than a wait time. That's always seems to be the focus. Keep it moving, keep the wait times down, keep it moving, keep the wait times down, get them out the door, go.
Wow. So basically, if you create a wait time, in other words, if you take a few extra minutes to do your job, that is viewed negatively from a management perspective.
It is. I've heard some pretty extreme stories about people who are, spoken to about taking too long, about going too far in the interview. I mean, that's everything that you're there for. I question what the 18 weeks training and the 1-year apprenticeship is for if I'm simply there to watch a machine allow people in.
Wow. So, okay, this just gets worse, I think, because you're basically saying that if an officer was to have some suspicions, let's say, and want to ask a few more questions, takes a little bit longer, they can actually be punished for something like that?
Never seen anyone punished for taking too long, but I think you're reminded that your coworkers are dealing with an extreme volume, and can we please keep the line moving?
Move it along.
In essence.
Move it along. You also used the word facilitation or facilitators. When you or your members decided that they wanted to become CBSA officers, were they thinking they were going to be facilitators, customer service people, serving drinks, or whatever this conjures up in your mind, I guess?
Yeah, we're not serving drinks yet.
Yet.
No, certainly not. It's a learning curve. I do meet with the recruits when they go through REGO, and you see the eagerness and everything that they want to do and why they get into the work. I guess I'm a bit of a Debbie Downer in that I try to give them kind of a realistic picture of what they can expect when they get to their workplace. And it's a little bit disappointing that that has to be part of what they learn.
I have a Roxham Road question. So, as you said, the RCMP dealt with people at Roxham Road. And from what I understand, they were simply given a customs violation crossing that border rather than something that a charge that could have been done under IRPA or something like that. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I don't know any specifics around that. I'm sorry.
Are there certain charges under IRPA that should be leveled against somebody irregularly entering our country?
There are, yes.
Okay, and to your knowledge, you don't know if they were being applied at Roxham Road or not?
I couldn't speak to exactly what happened with the charges that were leveled there, no. Sorry.
So even today, it's the RCMP, not CBSA, that deals with irregular crossers?
Correct, yeah. RCMP, and they have different combinations of provincial authorities depending on the province that are doing that work as well.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know. I think I've heard enough.